freaks, it's JJ. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is JJ, and I usually talk about concept albums here on my channel, but today I'm going to be talking about a subject, or I guess a question that I feel like gets tossed around a lot in the metalhead community, and that is how to turn your girlfriend / how to turn your friends into metalheads. And that gets, I don't know, I feel like this is just a question that's just been around since forever, so I'm going to be going step by step how to turn your girlfriend / any number of your friends into metalheads. So yeah, before we get started, make sure you hit subscribe if you want to support what I do here on this channel. I also invite you to join my metalhead community. Link is down in the description. It's totally free. From there you get access to bonus content and a monthly newsletter from me, as well as an exclusive playlist of videos not available here on my regular public channel. But anyway, let's get into it. Okay, quick disclaimer before we get started. I will be suggesting bands in this video that are not metal. Before you jump all over me in the comments saying this and that band is not metal, I know, okay. The whole point, I mean, I'll explain a little bit later, but the whole point is that a lot of these rock bands, or what I like to call metal adjacent bands, are great gateway bands into metal. So I'm aware that some of the bands that I will be suggesting in this video are not metal, but metal adjacent in my opinion. Okay. So I'm going to be breaking it down into a couple of different ways you can get your friends into metal. So first of all, your success in this task is going to vary greatly depending on how well you know this person. So first of all, you know, like what type of music are they currently into, and also what are their hobbies and interests as well. So first of all, we're going to talk about transitioning them into metalheads based on whatever their current music interest is. And so I'm going to start off with like the most obvious is pop music. It's called pop music because it's short for popular music, which means that most people are into pop music these days. So if your friend / girlfriend / boyfriend, whatever, is into pop music, you're going to want to start off with a couple of bands, introduce them to a couple of bands that have some kind of genre blending within them. My suggestions would be something like Sleep Token. Sleep Token is a great gateway metal band, as they, you know, have a lot of genre blending just within that one band and just within one song. So they're great for people who are into pop music. Also, side note, girls who are into dark romance will love Sleep Token. It's a whole TikTok thing. Anyway. Another band would be Polyphia. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but they have a lot of pop influences as well. I'm sure there are a ton more kind of like poppy metal bands out there. Feel free to suggest them down in the comments. Another avenue of introducing your pop music fan into some more heavier music is through metalcore. This is a very common route for people to get into heavier and heavier music, is starting off with some metalcore bands. And before you throw a bunch of shade about how much you hate metalcore or any kind of subgenre within the metal community that ends in core, I just want to say that it is an excellent starting point for, like, most metalheads start off with something in the core genre before, you know, graduating on. And even if you don't, I think metalcore is like one of the best genres out there. Fight me on it later. But, you know, some traditional metalcore bands like I Prevail and Bring Me the Horizon, they have a lot of songs that are not quite so heavy that you can start them off with and then gradually introduce them to a little bit heavier and heavier depending on if they end up liking those songs in the first place. So yeah, suggest other metalcore bands that have songs that are on the softer side and, you know, within their discography, like graduate into maybe heavier songs. And the third point for your pop metal music listener is to start off with bands that are a little bit more metal adjacent, bands that are a little bit more accessible to, you know, the general population. Bands like Ghost, and bands like newer Coheed and Cambria. Of course, if you watch this channel, you know I had to suggest Coheed and Cambria on this video at some point. And so feel free to suggest some metal adjacent gateway metal rock bands down in the comments as well. I'm going to be saying that a lot, so suggest away in the comments, because if someone's watching this video and they want suggestions on further bands to look into, I'm relying on you guys to put it in the comments, all the introductory bands. Okay, so moving on from pop music, let's say this person, this friend of yours, this girlfriend, whoever, is into like more rap and hip hop type music. The most logical step from there would be to get them into some trap metal. If they're into a lot of rap, trap metal is the kind of next step that you would think of logically. I can't suggest any trap metal bands because I don't really listen to trap metal. I'm sure there's some great ones out there. Drop that in the comments. Another route would be like old school new metal. I know that's kind of how a lot of people got started. Like if you're a millennial like me back in like the middle school days, it was all about new metal. And I think that kind of skirts the line between like some rappy type parts and heavier music. Also, Falling in Reverse, they get a lot of hate, but they genre blend so well. And of course, you have Ronnie Radke doing an excellent job, in my opinion, of rapping and blending in the like metalcore with the rap and like some pop elements. Falling in Reverse is a great gateway metal band, in my opinion, especially their newer stuff. And they have a whole range of like how heavy you want it to be. So yeah, Falling in Reverse would be one of my favorite bands to suggest for people who are kind of like in that category of like hip hop, rap, pop music listeners who would want to potentially listen to something a little bit heavier. Also, I might be showing my age here, but Hollywood Undead is of course like a what did they call it back in the day? It was called rack. We called it rack. It was like rock and rap mixed. I don't think they call that band rack anymore. That's like not a genre. But like I remember back in the day we used to call them that. It was like a whole fad, I guess. But they are still touring. They're still putting out great music. And I think they're all very talented members in that band. So Hollywood Undead would be another one. Okay, moving on to the next genre category. If your friend is into house music, because I guess that's a thing. This is just techno, right? Like, people like throw around this term like house music. I'm like, what is that? Maybe it's because I'm old or like I don't really listen to that type of music. But I'm like, what the hell is house music? But I guess we back in the days we used to call it techno, which was like Skrillex back in the day. But I guess nowadays it's considered like house music. I only have one band to suggest if this person's into house music, and that would be Author in Punisher. I don't know what genre category this artist would be put into, but he is very interesting, and I saw him open for Tool one time, and it's really cool to watch him live because he does all this like machinery stuff. I don't know, it just, maybe I need to throw a video up here to explain it, but it's cool and it sounds cool too, and a little bit on the heavier, darker spectrum of music. So yeah, if you have any other suggestions as for someone who's into house music and wants to listen to something a little bit heavier, we'll throw that in the comments. And next genre of music is if your friend likes listening to rock music, then they're already halfway there. You're, like, half your work is done if they're into rock music. I would honestly just say give it a little time and they'll probably, dip their toes into some metal eventually. But if you want to expedite the process, just give them something a little bit heavier than what they're already listening to. Just like heavier in very small increments. And I think they'll eventually start to, if they end up vibing with that, you can give them something a little bit heavier, and then boom, you're in metal territory. And moving on from there, if your friend is into listening to country music, then I really can't help you there. There's no hope. They'll never be a metalhead. I'm just kidding. Okay, this one can be kind of tricky. Country music is... Okay, there's a couple different options. One option would be to go kind of like the southern rock route. Some like Black Stone Cherry, and then if they end up liking that, maybe you graduate onto some Pantera. The other option is this kind of newish genre that I've only recently found on Spotify, is like a gothic country / dark country. There's a few playlists on there. They have some good music, some good mixes on there. I haven't really listened to it a ton. I've kind of just, dipped my toes in it. But I think that might be a good starting point. Again, suggest gothic country or dark country bands down in the comments. Also, side note, Jelly Roll paired with Falling in Reverse and just released that one song, All of My Life, which is like I guess they're calling it like Western metal. But yeah, it's a country song with some metal tidbits, I guess. So yeah, that might be a good starting point, might be a good, or at least worth checking out if your friend is into country music. And last but not least, if your friend is into listening to classical music, then again, you're kind of already halfway there because a lot of metal music has classical influences in it. I would suggest anything in the symphonic metal genre, bands that are not quite so heavy, more like Nightwish or like Sonata Arctica. And then from there, you can graduate onto other type of symphonic, like heavier symphonic bands, or just bands that have really great composition, such as Ne Obliviscaris. And then also there's a lot of like technical symphonic metal bands that release instrumental versions of their music. I know Flesh God Apocalypse always releases instrumental versions of pretty much their whole albums. You could start there, and it's like, you know, it's symphonic music, but with some heaviness thrown in, minus the scary vocals if they're too intimidated by the metal vocals. And so another side route to this would be if this friend of yours was an emo kid back in the day, / if they are a millennial. So if they're a millennial, the chances are they at least listened to some emo music back in the day. And if they were an emo kid back in the day, this is going to be like an easy process, especially if they still are into that type of music. That was my pathway. I started off with emo music back in middle school and then graduated onto metal music by college. So emo bands / pop punk bands translate directly into metalcore. That is a very common path that people take when they're first getting into metal, or at least they did back in my era. So what you want to do is you want to put together a nostalgia playlist for them. You know, all these like emo pop punk bands that you guys used to listen to back in the day. And then if they end up enjoying this nostalgia playlist, because I mean, who wouldn't? Then you can throw in some newer songs by those bands. Like a lot of these emo bands and these pop punk bands are still going strong. Go check out some of their newer music. They're still touring. They're still putting out great music, and they have some great like newer stuff coming out. And some of their like newer albums are fantastic. So then you can start kind of throwing in some newer songs by these pop punk bands, and then kind of go a little bit heavier, go into a little bit of like dip your toes into some metalcore bands, and then boom, you're there. Okay, so that's just covering if like transitioning them into metal from whatever genre of music they currently listen to. Another route you can go to turn them onto metal is through whatever their hobbies are, whatever their interests are. Like, what books do they read? What movies do they like? What kind of video games are they into? So that kind of goes along with this next list of like genres that I'm going to go into. So first of all, if they're into like fantasy movies, fantasy books, fantasy video games, you're going to want to go the power metal route. And I'm going to be mentioning a lot of power metal in this next section because power metal is a great gateway genre to begin with, because it's very accessible and it's not too scary, and it's for nerds, and every metalhead I've ever met is a total nerd. We're all nerds, okay? Anyway, so if this person is into fantasy type of books, movies, whatever, power metal, such as like Seven Kingdoms, they have a whole, I think they're all about Game of Thrones, songs about Game of Thrones, so that's perfect if this person is really into Game of Thrones. Blind Guardian, I think they have a whole album that is like a concept album based around Lord of the Rings. And then the band Camelot, especially if this person you are trying to get into metal is a girl, the lead singer is very cute, and it's a great band. Next up, if this person is into history, obviously Sabaton would be the logical choice. They go through a lot of historical battles and wars and just all kinds of fun stuff. So Sabaton, and I would just suggest Sabaton if they are a nerd in general. I love Sabaton. So I've actually gotten my sister into Sabaton because she's a huge nerd. She loves reading fantasy and all kinds of different books. And Sabaton is just, it's your nerd band, and I'm all for it. Anyway, let's say they're into books, movies, video games to do with pirates and Vikings. Easy. You got Amon Amarth, you got Ailstorm. Look up some Viking metal or pirate metal. Next, if they're into books, movies, video games to do with science fiction, I would suggest maybe going down the prog metal route, possibly. The Mars Volta have some very, like, outer space feeling albums, especially Deloused in the Comatorium. It's like galactic feeling to it, even though it's the story to it's not quite that. It's a very fever dream type of story, but we do go into alternate dimensions and all that. And then Between the Buried and Me has some excellent science fiction concept albums that go alongside it. And of course, again, I'm going to mention my favorite band, Coheed and Cambria, which again is not a metal band, but again, good gateway band. And they have sci-fi comic books. So prog rock, prog metal is a good place to start for your sci-fi fan, as well as, again, power metal. The band Arian has a lot of really cool sci-fi stories that go with all of their concept albums. Again, covered all of these on my channel. I'll link that somewhere. Except if they're really into comedy, movies, TV shows, books, whatever, I would suggest maybe starting off with some comedy metal bands. Of course, you can say like Psycho Stick and all that, but I would actually suggest Steel Panther, especially if this person is into boobies. A lot of boobs in Steel Panther shows and I guess in their videos and everything. Steel Panther, you would have to watch their music videos and determine whether your friend or girlfriend would be into that kind of humor. I find their music videos and their music hilarious, so I think it's funny. So don't discount it if you're trying to get your girlfriend into metal and you're like, oh, she wouldn't think that's funny. She might not, but I don't know. I think they're funny. So send your friend or girlfriend some Steel Panther music videos. And like another option would be like if they're kind of just like you want to graduate in something a little bit heavier, you could go like Necrogoblicon. They're comedy-ish, not necessarily a comedy act, but they definitely don't take themselves too seriously. Next up, if your person is into horror movies, books, TV shows, video games, the obvious answer to your horror fan will be Ice Nine Kills. If your person is like really into horror, like a true like old school horror fan, I think they can appreciate Ice Nine Kills because they're not just a band who happens to write songs about horror movies. Like they are really into the horror genre. Like Spencer is deep into all of the like little details of all these classic horror movies and more recent ones. Another option for your horror fan would be the band Ghost, because they feel Halloween-y, I guess. I don't know. I feel like that might correlate well because they're kind of spooky. I guess you want to go for that more spooky feel. And then last genre of interest, if your person likes romance, again, Sleep Token, I think I mentioned this earlier, but Sleep Token, Typo Negative, anything on the like sexier route, but definitely start with Sleep Token. Okay. Next area of interest, if your person is really into like working out or like doing lots of sports, running, whatever, if they're a gym rat, I would suggest almost like you can almost give them any metal to try out while they're working out and see if it helps them with their workout. Because there's this whole fight or flight instinct. So people who don't listen to metal will hear these like scary vocals and it'll activate that kind of primal thing within them that says, you know, like fight or whatever. So that could potentially help them with their workout even if they're not into that type of music. It might just trigger that kind of primal part of them. But if you want to give them things that are going to inspire them to work out better, harder, whatever, I think anything with a breakdown has the tendency to really get you like going. So, you know, metalcore, deathcore, things with breakdowns. Next area of interest, writing. I am an author, so of course I nerd out about concept albums. So if they're a writer, I want to suggest any kind of concept album. I have covered 50 or 60 of them here on my channel. That's what 90% of my channel here is me talking about concept albums. So check that out. I'll put a playlist somewhere. But yeah. There's a lot of ways that music can translate into storytelling. So that's something that I think might interest the writer in your life. Next up, if your person is into comic books, easy. There's so many bands that have come out with their own comic books recently. Just go to Z2 Comics. Look at some of the bands on there and check out some of their comic books. I've covered a few on my channel, not a whole lot, but I'll link those somewhere. But yeah, it's kind of a trend that I've been seeing. Like a lot of bands are getting their own comic books, which is really cool. But if you want to go with the OG band that has had comic books since the old days of Warped Tour or the early 2000s, you got to go with Coheed and Cambria. Next up, if the person you are trying to get into metal plays any kind of instrument, that's going to be an easy starting point, I think. Or at least an easy introduction. So first of all, if they play guitar, you can probably pick any band that you're into. And I think musicians can appreciate at least the technical skill needed to play metal music. Even if they're not into the music, into metal itself, they can at least, you can show them a clip of someone, they'd at least appreciate the skill and the artistry needed to accomplish that. So yeah, guitarists, maybe show them some Polyphia or something like that. And yeah, maybe just get them interested in like how insanely talented metal musicians are. If they play bass, maybe show them some Steve Harris stuff and how influential his bass playing has been. If they play drums, some of my favorite drummers are Danny Carey from Tool, Rand Daler from Mastodon. Show them some of those videos. And yeah, just get them interested in checking out the bands that these musicians belong to, and just wanting to dig further into how they accomplish this, and just the appreciation of the technical skill, I think, can come first, and then the appreciation for the music can come later. Let's see, what other instruments? If they play violin, Neobliviscaris. If they play cello, Apocalyptica. They play saxophone, Rivers of Nil in Ghost. And then if they are a vocalist, you can get really nerdy into the vocal styles and stuff. Metal covers almost every type of vocal ability. I don't know what technical term I'm looking for here, but you could show them clips of Bruce Dickinson and Floor Jensen all day long, but if you really want to nerd out about it, you can get into the whole but just talking about how these metal vocalists perform metal growls and metal screams without damaging their vocals, because I know that's a common misconception, is that these metal vocalists are going to be damaging their vocal cords, which can happen, but is, if you're doing it the right way, it's not going to hurt your vocals at all. So there is a whole like science behind it. They've put like scopes down metal vocalists' throat to see like how they're making this sound and how it's not hurting their vocals. Anyway, really interesting stuff. I once fell down that rabbit hole, so that could be a good starting point to talk about, like, just different vocal styles and everything. If they just want someone who's just like fucking killing it live, Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm does incredible live performance of vocals while playing the guitar. Again, Hailstorm is a rock band, so that's a great introductory metal adjacent band that someone can latch on to and then move on to heavier bands from there. So my next point is going to be like, the goal here is to just kind of get them started, to get them introduced. They may not end up going full bore metalhead, and I think that's okay. So I know people are like wanting to get their friend / girlfriend, boyfriend into the same music that they listen to, but I think if they get into a little bit of power metal and they stop there, if they stop at Sabaton, I think that's great. Like, now you guys have at least one band that you both like that you can go to a show to, or whatever. If they dip their toes into metalcore and they don't go any farther, they don't go any heavier, I think that's totally fine. I don't think you need to make them into like a full bore metalhead in order for you guys to agree on a few bands, a few playlists that you guys can listen to in the car, or like a show that you guys can go to together. I think you will have accomplished a lot, even if you only get them to enjoy one band that you guys both like. My next point is not being afraid to start with just plain rock as far as transitioning them into metal. So like, I think there's an easy route that a lot of people go these days, which is like Imagine Dragons to Breaking Benjamin to Bullet for My Valentine, or any other like metalcore band, and then going into metalcore, into deathcore, or whatever route they end up taking from there. So don't be like, oh, I hate Imagine Dragons, or they're a terrible band. Okay, you might think that, but that could be someone's gateway metal band, some rock band that you possibly look down upon, some Nickelback. Like, it's not wrong for people to start with just a simple rock band that is enjoyed by the general public. Starting there is just opening the doors and kind of, like showing them that heavy music can be fun. Even if that music is not really heavy to begin with. Like, they might think that is so heavy. But it's just, introducing them to the idea of rock music and then into metal music from there. And my next point that I hadn't talked about, I didn't list this in my genre specifications, is like, if they're into like classic rock music, again, you're like 90% of the way there. Like, that's how a lot of us metalheads started, was with a lot of this, like these classic rock bands, and then graduated on to heavier and heavier stuff. So I don't usually this is the route that I think a lot of people suggest, because it's the route they took as a metalhead, or a emerging metalhead, was they started off with those classic bands. But I wouldn't really suggest starting here unless the person you're trying to turn into a metalhead is on the older side, or they're already into some, classic rock music. But if you are going to go this route, if you think they are more open to like the classic bands, then you can start with something very like widely liked, like Queen. Everyone likes Queen. From there you can go on to like some Led Zeppelin, some Guns N' Roses, and then on to Ozzy Osbourne, and that leads directly into Black Sabbath, which then translates into doom metal, or possibly into Metallica or Iron Maiden, and then boom, you're there. And my last suggestion for how to turn your friends into metalheads is to not. Okay, this is gonna be controversial here, but if you've tried to get them into metal and it's not working, just give up. Honestly, metal music is not for everyone. Like if it was, then they'd all be looking like me or like you with your beard and long hair. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. And I think it's not that important that your friends listen to the same music as you. Yes, of course, it would be nice if you had, a group of friends you were able to go to festivals with, if you really want to take your girlfriend to all these shows, and, bond through the experience of the mosh pit and everything. I totally get that. But I think it's okay if your friends are not, or your girlfriend is not into the same music as you. Like, as long as you, can bond over other things or have other things in common, other things to do together, I don't think it's essential that, your friends listen to the same music as you or that they love the same bands that you do. So yeah, if you tried and it's just not working, just give up. It's okay. I'm sure there's other things you guys can agree on. And that brings me into my next and final point in this video is what not to do. Number one is to insist to the point of annoyance. Like I said, if you just keep badgering them over the head, try and listen to this, you're gonna like this. And if you've tried and it's not going anywhere, just, like I said, throw in the towel. It's okay to give up. You don't want to keep pushing someone, because a lot of the time, if you keep pushing, you're just gonna get pushed right back, and then then it's just going to become like an annoying thing that you do. You're going to be like that annoying person. So yeah, if it's not working, it's okay, move on. It's going to be okay, I promise. My next point of what not to do is do not just blast death metal in their face. I think this one is pretty obvious, but if your friend or girlfriend is not into metal, don't pick them up in your car and be blasting your technical death metal at full volume. That's just going to freak them out and give them negative feelings towards that type of music. And last but not least, do not drag them to a metal concert unless they have dipped their toes into metal, unless they are somewhat interested in the band that you're going to see, unless they've been briefed on what a metal show looks like. I have a whole playlist on a guide for beginner metalheads, talking about your first metal show, crowd surfing, mosh pitting, all that type of stuff. Feel free to check that out. I'll link that somewhere. But yeah, don't drag them to a metal show if they're not prepared, not into that type of music, or might be scared by what they experience there. That's just going to put them off towards metal music if they get freaked out or feel unsafe. So unless you know that they're going to have a good time, or you can ensure that they're not going to get too scared, then I would say just don't let that be the introduction to the music. It could work if they're already kind of interested in that band, or if they know a couple songs by that band, or if it's a band that's not super heavy, then yeah, take them to the show. It might convert them, but they have to have shown at least a little bit of interest in that band, in my opinion. So yeah, that is my whole spiel on how to turn your friends or girlfriends or boyfriends, whoever, into metalheads. The trick is starting off where you think they might meet you halfway. Their interests, their current type of music that they already listen to, that type of thing. And again, don't force music on them that you love, that you know that they're not going to like, at least not right away. You gotta ease in, and you got to go with what you think might appeal to them before showing them heavier stuff that you're into. And yeah, it's okay if they don't become a full metalhead. I think it's winning if you just get them to a couple of bands. Anyway, if you have any further suggestions on how to convert your friends into metalheads, please throw that down in the comments. Tell me all your stories. Suggest bands that are good gateway bands, other metal adjacent rock bands, any other advice that you guys have for someone trying to convince someone to become a metalhead. Put that all down in the comments. And if you found this information helpful, feel free to share it with your other metalhead friends. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and join my metalhead community. Again, it's totally free. Link is in the description. And thank you guys so much for watching. Till next time.